Okay, so in part 2 we're going to have a look at business budgets. So most people are familiar with the concept of budgeting. So households have budgets, hopefully. If we don't have a budget, then we tend to just spend haphazardly and we don't monitor or plan for the future. So budgets are not just related to accounting. So individuals may prepare a household budget or a holiday budget. So if you're planning to go to New York at Christmas time, you might prepare a budget, so much for the airfare, so much for the accommodation, so much to see Broadway shows, and what you might need for spending money and meals. Okay, that's a simple budget. We might prepare as an individual, a whole household budget. So we look at mortgage payments or rent payments, electricity rates, food costs, etc. And then we can work out then how much we can spend or how much we would like to spend. So individuals may prepare a household budget. Sports clubs usually have a budget for various functions. So say we have a fundraising event at the local football club, we would have a budget that goes with that. So it could be like a dinner dance. Oh, that's a really old-fashioned term. But it could be a dinner dance. So what we end up is, how many tickets do we need to sell in order to cover the cost of the room, hire, the cost of the staff that will serve the meals, the meal itself, etc. And then we estimate what sort of profit we will make from that function. So to sum up, almost all organisations in whatever field you are employed are likely to prepare budgets of some kind, and it's up to the individual firms. So for example, if you work in hospitality, you might have a budget for covers for the number of people that we want to serve in a restaurant. Right, forecast sales for a marketing firm, so how many new clients do we need to get in, and how many old clients do we need to use us for particular marketing strategies in order to forecast what our sales will be for the coming accounting period. We might budget labour costs for the HR section of an organisation, travel costs for a global firm. Okay, so that's becoming less common because a lot of the global firms can do things via the internet with video phones and other things. So but the travel costs may still be there. So we want to work out what the costs will be for a particular period in time so that we can set a limit, if you like. Okay, so the features of budgeting. So what budgets are prepared? Okay, so a firm decides itself what budgets it's going to prepare. So basically the budgets that are prepared for a particular firm are whatever the firm wants to prepare. Budgets use estimated figures or forecasts. So we're looking at estimating figures based on what we know has happened in the past, and we're forecasting what we think will happen in the future. The time period can be any length of time. So we could budget for the next month, we could budget for the next quarter, so 3 months. We could budget for the next financial year. So budgets can be for any length of time. Now the one thing that we keep in mind when we are preparing a budget is we want to link the budget with the strategies of the firm. So we're looking at things like, do we want to expand the firm? So what are the costs involved in that? Or do we want to increase sales? How are we going to go about that? If our strategy for the firm is increasing sales, then do we also need to increase our marketing budget to go along with that? So what we do is we start a planning session and we link the budget with the firm's strategies, and we do this as part of our strategic planning. So strategic planning is long-term planning, so usually 3 to 5 years, and this is the top layer, if you like. It's typically incorporated in a business plan, and it's carried out by senior management. So senior management get together and they look at and try and forecast where they want the firm to be in 3 to 5 years and how they go about achieving those goals or strategies. The strategic planning relates to broad issues related to the business's direction for the future. So they look at things like expansion plans. So if we're in Brisbane, do we want to expand to Sydney and Melbourne? Or do we want to add or delete a business segment? So business segment is, say we're a travel agent and we deal mainly in package tours overseas. Do we want to expand that to include package tours for Australia? Okay. Or do we want to wind it back? Is there a segment of the business that's not going so well, so we want to wind back our operations over the next 3 to 5 years and change it? So that's what we mean by addition or deletion of the business segments. The other thing is radical product or service development. So if we take Apple as an example, Apple bring out a new phone every 12 to 18 months. Okay. Now, when they brought out the iPad, that was a radical product. We hadn't seen an instrument like that before. Okay. And they have a plan. Okay, so they have a plan of what they're rolling out when. Service development, so same sort of thing. Remember, service is where we provide a service rather than sell goods. So travel agents, marketing, advertising, HR people. Okay, so do we want to add another service or change what we're doing in order to attract more business? Okay, so that's like strategic planning. Now, coming under that are the budgets. So the budgets try to operationalise strategic plans. They're a quantitative expression of the entity's overall business plan, and quantitative just means numerical. Okay, so we're going to crunch numbers in order to put a business plan into action. It'll show management, it shows how management intends to acquire and use resources to achieve the objectives in the strategic plan. Okay, so how we're going to use the resources of the firm, so the cash, the assets, the staff, etc., they're all resources, and how we're going to use those resources or acquire more of those resources to achieve the objectives in the plan. Preferably, it's not carried out by senior management. Now, the reason that we say that is because if it's carried out by senior management at the top, then the people under senior management don't have any ownership of the budget. So if you're just told what to do and what you need to achieve, unless you have some stake in it, you're not really, or a lot of people aren't really that motivated to get it done. Okay, so what good firms tend to do when they're budgeting is to build the budgets from the bottom up. So each of the little departments will put together the information that they need or they have and give it to the accountants or whoever's putting the budget together, and then they'll do an overall thing. So it's sort of, we talk about budgeting coming from the bottom up in the hierarchy of the firm. Budgets are typically accompanied by the control elements to ensure that plans are achieved, and this topic 8 is just objective 8 in these slides. Okay, so we've talked about what budgets are, so now we're going to talk about how they are prepared. So they are prepared based on management assumptions regarding such things as the state of the economy for the planning period. Okay, so if we're selling something like luxury garden furniture and the economy, the wider Australian economy, is not doing so well, then have a think about the demand for luxury garden furniture. Okay, so it's going to be decreased. So we would need to take that into account in our budget. But if times are good and people have spare cash, interest rates are down, then people have more money to spend on things like luxury garden furniture. So that's what we mean by the state of the economy. Adding, deleting or changing product lines. So If we were a fax machine manufacturer, we would have needed to move with the times and incorporate that into printers, or maybe just get out of that industry altogether and sell a product that is now, as technology moves forward, sell something or a product that goes with the current state of technology. We also look at the nature and degree of competition. Okay, so we'll have a look at what competitors we've got out there and how we compete with them. So what we need to offer in order to attract customers to us rather than them going to the competitors in our field. And also what we look at is the effects of government regulation. So if we are a firm that manufactures pool fencing, then the effect of stronger government regulation in pool fences will increase usually what we need to sell, but we might have to also change our product to comply with that government regulation. So they're the sorts of things that we look at. It's common for firms when they're using preparing budgets to use past data. So what we do is we start with the past data, what we know, or historical data, and then we adjust it for future expectations. So it's a little bit like gazing into a crystal ball, only we don't use crystal balls in business, but we look at what's happened in the past and work out what we need to do to adjust the past data for future expectations. So I guess the question comes to mind, is the preparation of budgets complex? So do you think that estimating dollar figures for the future is difficult? Yes, it is. None of us, as I said, have a crystal ball. That would make life so much easier if we could predict with accuracy what's going to happen in the future. But unless firms have an ability to predict the future with accuracy, this is an extremely difficult task. So it does take a certain amount of time, a certain amount of gut feeling, like this is what's happened in the past and this is how I think it's going to go in the future. And this is where our staff and our managers underneath senior management come into play. They are the people at the coalface. They know what's happening in our particular industry, and they usually have a very good feel for how things are going to progress into the future. Once, however, we're provided with the dollar estimates, the preparation of the budget is quite a simple task. Okay, so once we know what the dollars are, then plugging it into budgets is not very difficult. So in this course, we don't expect you to make the estimates. You will be provided with all the estimates that you need, and your task will be to insert those estimates into a budget. So we don't need you to make the estimates, okay? That'll be given to you in the workshop examples and in the exam questions, but what you need to be able to do is rearrange all those estimates into the budget format. Okay, so that's the end of part 2. The next part we'll look at which budgets are prepared.